only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
The National Weather Service has issued a severe thunderstorm warning.
Welcome to the Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast, where prepping doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. Coming to you from a well-defended off-grid compound high in the mountains. Coming to you from his Florida room in Richmond, Virginia. Neither off-grid nor well-defended, unless you count his chickens and cats. Here is your host, Keith.
Hey everybody, this is Keith, and just like the professional voiceover guy said a few seconds ago, this is the Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast. Today is New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2022. I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas, and I hope everybody has a safe and fun New Year's Eve this evening. If you're listening to this at a later date, I hope you had a safe and fun New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. The gas prices here in Central Virginia the other day, it got down to $2.89, and that was Wednesday. Thursday, it jumped to $3.09. So $2.89 to $3.09. I had no idea what happened, didn't get the memo. It was just kind of weird it jumped that high. I'm not sure if anticipating the New Year's Eve travel weekend or what was going on, but it was just a really pretty significant jump, really. I'm not even sure what happened with that one. I have finally tallied up the amount of money that I have saved by taking my lunch and not eating out the last several weeks, and I am proud to report that I saved approximately $350 over the last several weeks by taking my ham and cheese, my bologna, my chips, bottle of water, can of soda from home and not eating out of the break room or running down the street to get some Mexican food or wings or a burger and fries. Like most of the country, about a week ago here in the United States, most of the country had that terrible cold snap, Arctic blast, Siberian Express, I think is what they called it. I spoke about that on the last podcast. And folks, let me tell you, if you were not a part of that, if you were way, way out west or deep, deep in the south in Texas or Florida or in somewhere else in the world, you were lucky. It got down to 7 degrees here in Central Virginia in Richmond. -11 with the wind chill was the coldest, and the winds were sustained for about 4 days. 15, 20, 25 mile an hour gusts at some point. It was cold, and just like I predicted, my heat pump ran 24/7 for pretty much those 5 days. I had the thermostat set at 64. I ran the gas logs on and off, and it was not able to keep up, just like I knew it wouldn't be able to. So what I did was when I slept in a pair of like pajama bottoms, kind of lightweight pajama bottoms, long sleeve t-shirt, threw 2 extra blankets on the bed, and the cats and I crawled into bed and stayed warm for the most part. Like I said, the heat pump did not keep up. It was cold. Now, as far as the chickens, they were not very happy about the cold weather, although they did just fine. I had a little, it's like an infrared heater I put inside the coop, and it really didn't do a whole lot. I put some pink insulation foam over the windows on the inside, trying to keep any breeze or any draft down. That really didn't do much. I was not going to put a heat lamp in there, too significant of a risk for fire. And very soon, probably a day into it, the coop and the interior of the coop basically reached ambient temperature. So if it was 14 degrees outside, it was 14 degrees in the coop. I would get up about 15 minutes early, about 6:30, 6:15, 6:30 some mornings, and go out before the chickens got up. They like to drink their water out of a little kiddie pool. They're spoiled. So I would take a little 5-pound sledgehammer and bust up the ice that was sometimes almost 2 inches thick. I had a 5-gallon bucket of relatively warm water that I would pour into the kiddie pool. So when they came out, they had some water to drink. Now, I do have a heated base under their regular waterer inside the covered run. But like I said, they're spoiled. They like gathering around the kiddie pool and getting their water out of that. So currently, On the freeze dryer front, I have some avocado slices in the freeze dryer. They should come out just fine. I'm not sure why they wouldn't freeze dry just like apple chips or banana chips. So we'll give those a try here later on tonight or early tomorrow. I tried some apricots, but they didn't do very well. I'm going to have to go back and see what I did wrong with the apricots. So I'm just eating them whole instead of trying the slices again. Speaking of the cold snap, let's talk about Buffalo, New York. Was it about a month ago? They got hammered with 5-6 feet of snow. A lot of it was lake effect snow where the Buffalo Bills play. I believe that's Orchard Park, New York. 81 inches, I think, was the final amount in this particular place. They weren't able to play football. They had to move the game. It was them in Cleveland, or anyway, the game was moved to a different city altogether because there was no way people were going to get there, and there's no way they were going to be able to get the stadium cleaned out and the snow removed in time, for game time. It had just been too dangerous. So this particular storm. So today is Saturday. Thursday evening is when a lot of businesses were able to open up in Buffalo, which is basically Erie County. So according to Erie County Public Affairs folks, 17 people were found dead outside, most outside their homes. 9 died in their homes from lack of heat. 4 were found dead in their vehicles. 4 died of heart-related issues from shoveling snow, which happens all the time, unfortunately. And 3 people died when EMS was delayed in getting to them just because of the snow. So somebody called, I'm having a medical emergency, heart attack, whatever it happens to be, and the folks died before EMS could arrive. So it got me to thinking, I have, a car kit that I have in the back of my Jeep. It's in a little bag, and if I take my other vehicle, just my regular 4-door car, I'll throw that bag in there. So I was wondering how well prepared I was. So I went to the FEMA website, the FEMA app, and then I went to the website just to make sure that they were the same. So this is FEMA's general car kit, and I added a lot to it. Flares or a reflective triangle. Obviously, you're broke down on the side of the road. You want to be as visible as possible. An ice scraper makes perfect sense. Cell phone charger, like a battery bank, absolutely. This is what I've added. They have just blanket. I have 2 blankets, and they are wool blankets. Yes, they're itchy, but yes, they're warm. On the FEMA website, they did not talk about food and water. So I did. I'm talking about it right now. Food and water, a couple bottles of water, 4 bottles of water, granola bars, snacks that are, that'll, not expire in several weeks. A map, okay. I can read a map, but there's a lot of folks out there that cannot read a map. So throw a map in there anyway, just in case you need it. Cat litter or sand, something I didn't really think of. You can put under your tires so you can get a little more grip, a little more traction if you need to get, out of a small, I don't want to say a ditch, but maybe a low spot. You rock the vehicle back and forth. You got the sand under the tire, and maybe it'll get enough grip, and you can move on. A flashlight. A flashlight was not on the FEMA website. Yes, we all have flashlights on our cell phone, but we need to preserve the power on our cell phone, calls, texts, that sort of thing. So bring a flashlight. And what about a small portable shovel? Something very small. They fold up. You can get them at Amazon or Army Supply, surplus stores, that sort of thing. You always want to make sure that if you're stuck. So you run off into a ditch and you're going to be there a while, get out of the vehicle. And if you're going to run the vehicle, make sure that the snow is not covering up the exhaust pipe. Carbon monoxide is a bad deal. It will back up into the car, especially if the snow has covered the car and it's not allowing any sort of ventilation underneath the car. Carbon monoxide is absolutely deadly, so make sure the exhaust pipe is clear. If you're going to be in your car, run the car for 10 to 15 minutes each hour. It's going to suck. You're going to be cold, but you've got your blankets. And you don't want to waste your gas, okay? If you're going to be there a while, you need to make sure that you're going to have enough fuel to run the car a little bit to keep yourself warm, and then you're going to turn it off for 45, 50 minutes. Then you're going to turn it back on again. Make sure you dress for the weather. I'm just as guilty as the next person. Oh, I'm just going from the garage to the car, And then when I park at work, I only have to go like 50 feet or 50 yards, or it's only a 2-minute walk. So I've just gone on a long sleeve t-shirt, cargo shorts, pair of boots, and that's it. Make sure you dress for the weather. Hand warmers, the chemical hand warmers, take up very little space. I'm not even sure if they have an expiration. So make sure you have a couple of those in your glove box. Okay. They're going to keep you warm. You can put them under your armpits. Obviously, you can put them in your pockets with your hands. Maybe tuck one down into your boots. Try to make sure there's something like a sock or something between. Try not to put them on your bare skin. It can get really hot. So just make sure there's something, a light piece of material between the hand warmer and any bare skin that you might have. If you have an iPhone, if you open up the Map app, you can show your current location, and then you have the ability of sharing that current location. It's like the little square with the arrow sticking out of the top. You can share your location to family and friends. So let's say EMS cannot get to you. They're just like in Buffalo. They're not going to be able to get to these folks that are stranded on the side of the road. You can share your location. If someone's like, well, where are you? Well, I don't know where I am. It's a complete whiteout. I think I was on Main Street. I took a left like I always do, and I really don't know exactly where I am. Share your location or your last known location, landmarks. Then folks are going to be able to get to you. Family, friends, someone's got a 4-wheel drive, someone's got a snowmobile, whatever it happens to be. You basically send that as a text message. They pull it up. It drops into their map program, and they can see where you are. Do not get out of your car unless you know exactly where you're going and you are dressed for the walk that could be 5 minutes or 50 minutes. And remember, if you're going through deep snow, it's going to be very exhausting. So if you're not in good shape, don't do it. Wait for help. If you have the fuel in your car, if you're dressed for the weather, just stay put. Don't go out in the weather, end up again, then getting lost. You fall down, you go into a snowbank, nobody's going to find you. Had an incident about coming up on 2 weeks ago on the way to work, and I came upon an accident. It had just happened. It was a pickup truck versus a gentleman on a bicycle, and you can imagine who won that one. I got out of my Jeep, and I grabbed my EDC. Minimal stuff in there, okay? It's your everyday carry bag. So I grabbed it, and I ran up there. The gentleman was on the ground, obviously in pain. One young lady was on the phone with 911, and the other lady was talking with him, comforting him. And I walked up and I said, is there any bleeding or what can I do to assist? The lady who was comforting him says, I'm a nurse and I don't see any bleeding. She has more medical training than I do. So at that point, I was assisting her. I have just basic first aid. I'm not going to take over the scene from a lady who is a registered nurse. I waited until an off-duty sheriff's deputy pulled up, and he had a trauma bag that he grabbed from his trunk. At that point, I stepped away because he has probably just as much training as me, if not a little bit more. And I just went ahead and grabbed my EDC, and I went back to my Jeep, and I got back on my way to work. If I had stayed, I'm just someone else gumming up the works. My Jeep was over onto the shoulder, so that's a vehicle potentially taking up space where very soon at least one ambulance, a couple police cars are going to come to the scene. And the last thing I want to do is get wedged in between a bunch of emergency vehicles and be late for work when I don't have to be. Now, if I was there rendering first aid and I get blocked in, that's a completely different story. And I have no issue with that whatsoever. So one of those things, I've had it in the Jeep for maybe a month, and it would have come in handy in the event, there was bandages and that sort of thing. I could apply direct pressure and elevation. If it was a wound to the arm, something to that effect, until EMS got there. I did not have my fancy wool blanket. If I did, and it was cold that morning, I would have grabbed my blanket and I would have covered him up and then waited, obviously, for EMS. They'd get there, and then I would go ahead and remove the blanket. If it was okay with the paramedics or the firefighters, I'd be about my way. So it certainly came in handy. Okay, so now for the main subject matter, I guess, of the podcast. I want to continue talking about the Twitter files and specifically how they relate to the suppression of information surrounding COVID and the COVID vaccines. So you all know that Elon Musk probably a little over a month ago now, purchased Twitter. And his promise or whatever to everybody was that he was going to make Twitter a free speech platform, much more of a free speech platform than it has been in the past. We talked about the FBI and their suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop, and the FBI having a direct contact with the folks at Twitter, asking them to remove posts, ban people that were, according to them, spreading misinformation. They call it Russian propaganda. Of course, we know that's not true. There is a real laptop. There are, several crimes that he committed, and maybe that'll be investigated, maybe not. Well, they did the same thing with Twitter and with Dr. Fauci and the information that he wanted out there. I believe that both administrations, both the Trump administration and the Biden administration, had something to do with this. Obviously, much more with the Biden administration, because this was going on up until, about a week ago. So when several doctors, several scientists, and these are smart people. These aren't people that are just pulling stuff out of their butts and putting it up on the internet. There's virologists. The guy who actually invented mRNA, he actually took to Twitter and was providing information. Now, right or wrong, I don't know. I'm not an expert in this field. But when Fauci and the powers that be worked with Twitter to have these folks banned or shadow banned and removed from Twitter because these people did not want the messages from these medical professionals getting out there, that's not good. Again, I've said a million times, do your research, get your information from multiple sources, and you be the person to make the informed decision for you. But when there is a concerted effort by anybody, a single person, a group of people, a department within the government that goes to Twitter, again, a privately owned company, and they say, hey, Dr. Jones, Dr. Mike, and Dr. Linda are spreading misinformation. What they're saying is a danger and people are going to be harmed or killed. Twitter bans them. Facebook, Google, all the other social media platforms, they're doing it as well. There is no way that it was just Twitter that was removing people and shadow banning people and scrubbing videos and scrubbing articles and links. It wasn't just them. It had to be everybody. If you can find something on one social media platform, you can find it on the other. So there's not a doubt in my mind that Google was scrubbing a lot of the articles and a lot of videos that supported some of the information that these doctors and these experts were trying to get out there. And in a nutshell, they were saying that the vaccines were not, quote, safe and effective, end quote. They were saying that the masks were completely ineffective. They were saying that social distancing was not working. They preached from the highest mountain that they could that lockdowns were absolutely the wrong thing to do, and that the vaccines had potential side effects. Some side effects were very minor, and some side effects are potentially fatal. So within about last week or 10 days, Twitter started reinstating a lot of these doctors and a lot of these scientists, a lot of these professionals, and many of them are back on Twitter again, talking about the things that they were talking about before they were banned. Now, if somebody gets banned from Twitter, their articles, their videos are going to be removed from YouTube. So for the most part, if you were not aware of what Dr. Mike was saying prior to being shadow banned or banned off Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Google, you would have no idea who Dr. Mike was and what he was saying. Now that information is back out there. Google is still scrubbing those articles and those videos. Some of these folks were on YouTube, but they had to be very, very careful about what they say. There are certain words that they cannot say or they will be removed from YouTube. So they're bringing to light this information that they were putting out there last year and a half up to, I think probably May or June of this year when the last of them were shadow banned. A lot of this information I was completely unaware of for the reasons I just spoke about for them being banned. Now, the mainstream media when a lot of these doctors and scientists were shadow banned and removed, the media went along with the narrative that they were conspiracy theorists. They didn't know what they were talking about. They were spreading misinformation. You need to listen to the media. You need to listen to Fauci and not these quacks that were spreading this misinformation. Well, the misinformation that these quacks were spreading happens to be the truth. I have read probably 20 or 30 articles in the last week that shed a lot of light, at least for me, on COVID, the vaccines, social distancing, lockdowns, the whole nine. Everything that we were doing, March of 2020, I think, March 13th, March 15th, I think is when it really kicked off, at least here in Central Virginia. Masks were never effective. And if you look deep enough, you can find Fauci saying that. Social distancing does not work. If you dig deep enough, you can find articles and actually find video where professionals are talking about this. When it comes to the vaccines, the initial vaccines, and then the booster, then the second booster, and now they're talking about additional boosters, the information we went with was what the government, what Fauci and his crew were telling us. Now, when Fauci went in front of a congressional hearing and Rand Paul from Kentucky was questioning him about gain of function, and Fauci was refusing to answer, and they got into several arguments. Again, the media portrayed Rand Paul as a nut job, even though he's a practicing physician. Okay, he's not a virologist. He doesn't have nearly the type of qualifications that Fauci does, when it comes to viruses, and I get that. But the media was quick to point out that Rand Paul was again trying to spread misinformation, and the media went after him. Don't listen to him, listen to Fauci. And it just went back and forth. And I just read an article yesterday that Fauci's wife is she part of the World Health Organization? Anyway, she's like his boss. I forget what department. She's his boss. So she is in charge of making sure that the information that he puts out is accurate. Well, talk about the fox guarding the hen house. Anyway, that's terrible on so many different levels. So what I'm saying is this, folks. Again, it all goes back to get the information from several different sources. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not an economist. Again, I'm just a guy with two eyeballs and two ears that feels as though it's important to me to gather as many of the facts as I can. Masks are good. Masks are bad. Lockdowns help. Lockdowns suck. Vaccines are great. Vaccines are terrible. You get all the information, then you decide what you want to do. It's wrong for one person, two people, 10 people to decide what is the truth and what is not. Those 5 people that decide what you should hear or what you should read in the spirit of, misinformation, there is obviously a hidden agenda there. Maybe it's not so hidden. You talk about ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, medications that have proven to be very, very effective against COVID. But if you're a doctor or a scientist or a medical professional that comes out and says ivermectin is great, and within a day or two, these people who had COVID are off ventilators and they're doing cartwheels down the hospital hallways, then you're a quack. Because guess what? Ivermectin is super, super cheap. It's been around for 50, 60 years, and nobody makes money by selling a pill that is a penny. Okay, I'm going to close with this. I'll adjust my tinfoil hat for a moment. And it's funny. Everybody called people conspiracy theorists when they talked about potential side effects for the vaccines and that sort of thing. And now it's coming to light. There's more and more information out there. So again, a lot of the conspiracy theorists have been proven right. Very briefly, and then I'll talk about this in a later podcast. The World Economic Forum, Schwab. What is it? Schwab or Schwantz? Schwantz. I think that's probably a bad word in some language. Schwab, the Great Reset. Again, this is not a conspiracy theory. You can go to the World Economic Forum and they'll tell you exactly what the Great Reset is. So if you want to read about that, please do. China, digital currency and social credit. Again, this is not something that somebody dug up off the internet. China is now gone to a digital currency. They'll tell you about it, and they'll tell you why it's great and how it's going to help. Same with social credit. Here's digital currency. Your debit card is tied directly to the government. You get your pay through your employer, through the government. So if you get your $500 a week every Friday, there's your $500. They can provide that money just as easily as they can remove that money or stop your direct deposit. You can't buy fuel, you can't pay bills, and you can't support your family. In China, if they don't like what you're saying or what you're doing, your little debit card suddenly goes to zero. Same as social credit. If you're on social media, if you're protesting against the government, your social credit score begins to drop. And guess what happens with that? You don't get the job, your digital currency is either at zero or it's been throttled back. And so the government that controls digital currency and your social credit basically controls your life. Now, it was Schwab who said that China's model for digital currency and social credit is something to be looked at as perhaps the model for the rest of the world to use. Now, the whole thing behind the World Economic Forum is, a one world order. So there are no real governments. Everybody's all in this together, and there are very few people controlling everything. And again, I'll go into this later. It's very detailed. You guys can read up on it if you wish. It's some scary stuff. I would not be surprised if some sort of digital currency came out as kind of a test, kind of a beta test or whatever, with, a small group of people, whatever it happens to be, sometime within 2023. It's direct deposit. I don't have to worry about, currency. I don't have to worry about money. It's just always there. And if you're doing something that the powers that be do not approve of, maybe your money gets cut off. Well, aren't I just a ray of sunshine today here on New Year's Eve? Listen, folks, thank you for joining in. I've looked at the metrics over the last several days, and again, the podcast continues to gather traction. I really, really appreciate every single person that takes the time to stop by and listen to me ramble about things. And again, everything I talked about today ties directly into being prepared, whether it's the blizzard in Buffalo and you being prepared in your vehicle, whether it's having extra food and water for a hedge for inflation, or when it's something a little more nefarious. We talk about the Great Reset. We talk about situations where you need to take charge of your own life, your own preparations, that in the event something does happen outside of, some sort of natural disaster or catastrophe, that you're prepared, that you're going to be able to provide for yourself and your family. All right, folks, thank you so much again for stopping by. And as always, everybody be safe, take care of one another, and until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. While you're at it, help spread the word by leaving a rating and review.